Hey, I'm Sarah Gonzalez. Welcome to the news and why it matters. We have a special guest in the house. Jason Howerton is back with us from CRTV.
Yes.
Hey, thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Stu, what is the top story for you?
The National Football League.
That's it?
I mean, it's definitely the top story, but there's an observation I think is actually somewhat pertinent to the audience and the way we think about, there's sort of these culture wars.
Is it that the Cowboys beat the Eagles?
I don't remember that. I mean, if that's true,
that
I didn't
news
see
matters
that.
to me.
Right?
Yes, that was a couple weeks ago. We're about to take actually the NFC East. That's even bigger news.
That's really sad.
Yeah, I know, right?
Not a good division.
No, not this year, Jason.
Judicial dictatorship, and how do you know when you're on that road in that direction?
Okay. Jason Howerton.
It's got to be Dan Crenshaw, and of course, he's from Texas, and he's making all of us proud down here.
Yes, I love that story. Got a lot to get into. Before we do that, we want to thank our sponsor, Brick House. So as you can see on this table, we have some lovely vegetables. We've got the broccoli over here, the cauliflower over here, some edible moss. And so you could think about eating this.
This is like your Thanksgiving dinner right here.
It is. It is. I know. I'm talking about Field of Greens, but really, deep down, I'm like, oh, this looks really good. So you could think about eating this, or you could think about eating your vegetables in a shake, a smoothie. It comes in powdered form. Again, it's called Field of Greens. You take one scoop and you put it in whatever liquid you want. And it tastes great. You guys have tried it.
Yeah, it tastes really great, and it's a way to get your vegetables without having to eat your vegetables. Yeah. So that is really nice. You don't have to be Sarah and enjoy cauliflower to be able to work in this world and get the vegetables your mommy told you to eat that you never did.
Yes.
And I'm about as meat and potatoes as it gets.
Right.
So I don't.
So you need this
I don't
in
touch
your diet.
It's exactly what I need. My wife is actually thanking you for the introduction to this. So.
Say technically a potato is a vegetable, and we should see it as that when it's fried in particular.
I don't know. I think you'll lose the nutrients that way.
Okay, Miss Scientist over here, whatever.
But yes, your wives will thank you. They'll get off your back. So you can go to brickhouseblaze.com and use promo code GREENS for 15% off your first order, or you can text GREENS to 41411. Stu, the NFL.
Yes,
we always appreciate when Glenn is gone and we get
the cat's away. It's time for the mice to play and talk a little sports, and it's related to sports, but it's not exactly sports. First of all, if you didn't see the game last night, you missed out in a big way. 54-51 win. History. Yeah, it really was. It was one of the most amazing games I've ever seen. A few penalties early on, but other than that, it was a great game to watch. It was really exciting. Massive plays on offense and defense. I mean, it had it all. The crowd was insanely into it. The game was scheduled for Mexico City and was moved to the last second. So it was kind of like everyone
Which is weird for LA because I live there and they suck at being fans for anything.
Yeah.
Absolutely awful. In my opinion, they don't even deserve an NFL team because half the time they don't even show up to the games.
Yeah. No, well, they lost them for decades. That's why basically.
One of the biggest markets in the country. Yeah. How does that even happen?
I know. But last night they were into it. I don't know if it was because just the way the seats were sold, and but it was really exciting. It was a playoff atmosphere. It felt like watching the Super Bowl, and these two teams might wind up there. And it was really interesting. And as the game was over, I was kind of like basking in the afterglow of another great NFL game. And I'm a huge fan. I started thinking to myself, like, there's a bunch of different kinds of people, right? There's people that just don't care about football, like, totally understandable. There are people who love it and watch it. There are people who would have loved to have watched that game, but it ran late and they didn't wind up watching it. But there's one group of people that I think it's sad, which is the people who love football and would love to be watching it, but made a decision over the past couple of years to boycott the NFL because of the kneeling situation.
A lot of my friends.
A lot of people in our audience, I think, did this.
I was just going to say, I think it is a lot of people in our audience.
And I understand it, and I understand why you would do that, right? You're saying, hey, the country's more important to me than this, and I believe the national anthem is important, and people should be standing for it. Completely agree. But take a step back for a second, and I think like looking at this again is worthwhile doing. There's Colin Kaepernick taking a knee is one guy taking a knee on a field. He is no longer in the league. He's not actually in the league and hasn't been in the league for multiple years. There are approximately 2 or 3 people in the entire league who are taking a knee and protesting the national anthem right now. if it's even that. I know one cheerleader recently started doing it as well.
Really?
Yeah, there's one cheerleader on the Bucks, and there's, I think, 2 or 3 players who are currently involved in this. This is 2 or 3 people out of 700 people in the league, a very small percentage. All those other players, in fact, many of them real patriots, people who have the technical team, the Patriots, but also people that America should like, unlike the Patriots. But like people who are real supporters of the military, people who, I mean, the Patriots organization are huge supporters of Donald Trump, right? Like
people like Dak Prescott who refused to kneel and then beat the Eagles. But yes,
That did happen.
That did happen. I think, was it the...
For America.
That was the one in the Super... No, that was the other... Oh, God, no, they won. The Eagles won the Super Bowl. So something totally separate.
All right.
Okay, I got this year. I got one freaking year. Give me a year. But so, like, I understand the idea to go to this, but take a step back. I think conservatives wind up getting in these culture wars sometimes, and we assign our decision-making process to others. Why, if it's something that you would have enjoyed watching that game last night, why are you letting Colin Kaepernick make that decision for you? Why would the actions of this one guy who is not even in the league, why would that matter and affect what you're doing? That giving control to Colin Kaepernick and his choice of sock is not something I want to be a part of. I want to make decisions on my own. And, I think we get into this world where because Washington and the media have identified this culture war, we have to take this, stance and change our behavior based on what Colin Kaepernick says. Like, Colin Kaepernick, I believe, has the right to protest. He can do whatever he wants. But I believe he's patently wrong about the issue he's talking about. Mm-hmm. And if I wouldn't trust him on analyzing the actions of police, why would I trust him on my entertainment choices? This is my life. I get to make the decisions in that life. And I think we lose sight of the fact that, yes, this has been it's all over Facebook, it's all over Twitter, this culture war thing, and it's faded out quite a bit since the president started talking about it. But between Washington and media, it's been this big thing, and they have told us we need to take a position on this. Well, every time you walk into a restaurant, there are servers at that restaurant who feel the same way Colin Kaepernick does. There are cooks at the restaurant who feel the same way Colin Kaepernick does. Every time you go to a gas station, the people working there. You go to a grocery store, the people stocking the shelves. The television stations you watch, The Blaze. I guarantee, I don't know who, but I guarantee there's somebody here who certainly disagrees. There's plenty of people who disagree, but really agree with what Colin Kaepernick says. There are people in Trump's administration, I bet you. I mean, Omarosa was there for a while. She seemed to be pretty, working with that. There are, every place you go, you're going to find people who disagree with you and take passionate stances on the other side. If you make your decisions based on what they're doing, you're giving them control of your life. And I don't like doing that at all. As a person who's an individualist and a conservative, I feel like I need to look at that and make my own decisions. And if your decision is, well, football sucks, or your decision is, I can't do this because I really feel upset about it, I understand that. But we shouldn't let those decisions be made for us. We have to really stop and think about it and say, this is something that I really enjoy. Do I want something that is going to give me 3 hours of enjoyment taken away because of someone whose opinion I don't even respect is being talked about on the field? And of course, not anymore.
I'll tell you what I did real quick.
Yes.
Because I'm a very big, obviously, patriot guy. Mm-hmm. I love the anthem. I want you to stand.
Yes.
I think it's a sacred moment. But what I did with the guys who were kneeling and doing all this stuff, I didn't boycott football. I just rooted for them to get laid out, and I'd watch and I'd root for teams playing against teams that were doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It makes it even more enjoyable.
Makes it even more enjoyable. So I'm with you 100%. I mean, we have to learn to agree to disagree and to understand that you're never going to. Why would you want to silence everybody who change the world to be exactly what you agree with? I'm with you 100%.
What irritates me on this is just like how you talked about the overexposure with the media. Like this could have happened back in the day. We just never heard about it because it wasn't blasted all over every single screen, whether you're holding it or watching it, in your living room, 24 hours a day. I mean, it was just insane, the exposure. Mm.
It's relatively unimportant too. Like the flag is important. Patriotism, I think, is important. What are, more than this, even like Western values and what our country stands for is really important. But like the idea that someone whose opinion I outwardly don't respect is doing something that I don't respect should not really. I mean, why would that be a big deal? You know,
It'd be different if the league took a position as a whole, right? That's different, but that never was the case.
And the opinion seemed to be basically the league should have been harder on them or whatever. But I mean,
kick them out of the league, whatever.
Right, like, and they could take that stance, I guess, if they wanted to. But like, it shouldn't be. I mean, you think about Fox News, right? Like the typical conservative network that people would mention. It's like people who are on. We were there. There are people on the air. I mean, Shepard Smith seems pretty darn friendly with this outlook. Certainly there are cameramen and everybody, there's tons of people who work at Fox News who are lockstep in line with Colin Kaepernick.
Where it gets difficult, in my opinion, is it's so easy to fix. The problem is easy to fix if they really want to fix it. Like, I don't care where you work, there are rules, and if you don't abide by them, you're fired. Now, it's so easy for them to fix. They can just say, look, guys, you either stay in the locker room or you don't kneel. You stand there, you don't have to put your hand on your heart, you don't have to sing, whatever. But you do this or else you get fined $50,000, per game.
They'd still do it. Some of them would still do it.
And they would eventually quit after they've lost half their paycheck that year.
Maybe.
I mean,
I
if you're losing
you're
50,
in favor of them creating a rule making them stand.
oh, absolutely. Well, yeah. Actually, yeah.
Are you sure?
Actually, I mean, yeah. I'm absolutely in because I think it's ridiculous.
The rule exists in the NBA, right?
I don't think political protest should be a part of sports. I just don't.
I think that's a totally fine position. I think what the NFL is looking at here is not like the NFL. Like they embrace every freaking patriotic thing that they can think of. They are not trying to make America statements. Yeah. But I think they look at this as a problem. There was a rumored policy that was going to come out, which was, hey, you guys need to be in the locker room or come out on the field or you're going to get fined. They actually were implementing that. The problem with this arrangement is they were in lockstep, or they are in a relationship with a players' union that has a lot of freaking power, and they opposed it. And if they don't agree to it, yes, they can come out, and then you have to leave it to individual owners to find their teams and find their own players, and then those players are going to get pissed off, and it just winds up being too much of a hassle, I think. And I personally am fine with them kneeling if they want to. It tells me something about them, which I don't like. I mean, it would make me think of wanting to root for a different player, or get them maybe laid out. If you're allowed to tackle anymore in the NFL, I don't know if that's still allowed.
Not really.
But I don't have a problem with them being able to do that if they want to do it. It's just I can see how it's a problem. Like when you're running a business like that, if you lose your star players, it becomes more of an issue. And I always feel like the real solution to this is what's wound up happening, which is you don't see the anthem covered that way anymore. You don't. For a while there, every time the anthem aired, you'd have to have cameras on every single person and watch them all kneel. They just don't show it anymore, and now no one talks about it.
Yeah, and one of the things that ticked me off in going towards that exposure stuff is, like last year or the past couple of years, there's been an explosion in faith-based players and actually demonstrating it on the field. Like before, that was controversial. Yeah. Tim Tebow runs out there and kneels down, like, oh my gosh, what's he doing? Now look at and gosh, I cannot believe I'm going to say this. I don't want to say this. But the Philadelphia Eagles players are one of the best at this, actually. They'll go out there, they'll pray beforehand, and they'll show it, and every once in a while, afterwards, almost every single one of the Eagles is on a 30 for 30 or some kind of before Fox special showing how great they are.
A lot of monetized video views from your Eagles in there.
Carson Wentz probably mostly. Yeah, Carson Wentz is one of the leaders for that. But hardly anybody else will cover that. You'll get that every once in a while on ESPN or something like that. But as a whole, no one wants to cover that. They want to cover the people kneeling during the national anthem, but not that.
Yeah. All right. I think that we've hit our quota of mentioning the Philadelphia Eagles for probably the month. So let's take a break.
Did you know last year they won the Super Bowl? Did you guys see that? That was incredible.
Sadly.
The best moment in American history. You saw that?
No. All right, more to get into, but first want to thank our sponsor, Riduzone. Riduzone has been a godsend for me. I used to be what you would call a little chunky, or maybe you would just call really fat, I don't know. But that was me, the number 10. And
it does not look like you at all.
It doesn't make any sense.
I feel like it's a scam, is what I
It's not. It's
feels
me.
Like a scam. All right.
It's me next to my beautiful, tiny little mother who is still tiny and has really good genes. I don't. I always struggled with really slow
know
metabolism.
That she probably passed some of those along. That's how this works.
No, I got my metabolism from my dad's side. sadly. And so I just have had sluggish metabolism my whole life, but I lost the weight and I was having trouble keeping it off. And Riduzone helps with that because it helps boost metabolism and help you feel full longer. It's something you're definitely going to want going into the holidays, so you don't gain like a gazillion pounds from now until January, and then have to work it all off as a New Year's resolution, which then no one does that. Right? Like everyone's resolution is like, I'm going to lose weight this year, and then they don't.
Yeah.
For a couple weeks, I'm all about it.
Yeah, everyone's at the gym the first couple weeks.
It's so annoying, I know.
It's a couple weeks, but it's spread over several months.
For those of us who stay
Individual
in the
days.
gym, it's annoying.
I bet. You're just like, okay, this was my machine every morning at this time, but now all these people want to come in. So Riduzone can help with that so that you don't have to go through all of that. You can go to riduzone.com. That's riduzone.com. Get 30% off of a 3-month supply right now using promo code THEBLAZE. That is, I believe it's like $1.39, $1.79, something like that a day. That's nothing to invest in your health. Go to riduzone.com. One of the Jasons, Jason Buttrell, judicial dictatorship.
Yes. So this is really irking me lately. Every time a federal judge will, so going back, the last time a judge really pissed me off was when they put the injunction for getting rid of DACA.
I love that he has a list of like when a judge really pissed him off.
It's a long list, but I'll skip to just 2 instances for the sake of time. Was just amazing to me because that was not a law. That was something that then President Obama just did, which you could even say that was just unconstitutional. Yeah. But he just executive ordered this thing just as kind of like a stopgap. Didn't go through Congress. It could have. But the moment that the current president tried to give the power back to Congress, he said, no, you can't do that. I'm like, what? It's like, how? You're not interpreting any law. Yeah. Like this is, I don't understand that. Well, the most recent one was, I believe it was yesterday, where a district judge, that's still considered a federal judge, right? Federal judge, shut down the president's plans to not allow asylum seekers when they enter the country illegally to claim asylum. They have to go through like a legal, like an actual point, of entry to do that.
Right.
So
you mean they have to actually go through the process that is laid out for them to go through.
Right. Well, so let's talk about that because it's the law is the Refugee Act is kind of vague on that. So basically, there is some wording that says basically if you interpret it the way this judge interpreted it, I guess, is as long as they get inside the United States or get to the border, they can claim asylum. Now, this was one of the reasons why I got out of the Marine Corps, and it's probably just military-wide. Because they make you do things that just don't make sense. Like there's guys, common sense. We don't have to follow, use some common sense here. The Refugee Act was enacted in 1980. They obviously had no idea that there was going to be this tactic of 2,000, 3,000, whatever people just flooding down to the border. They didn't think about that. Now that's obvious to people like now, be like, okay, now maybe we should use a little common sense here. But of course, this is all about judicial activism here. So he doesn't really care. He went off of a lawsuit from the Southern Poverty Law Center for crying out loud and the ACLU. I mean, it's got activism written all over it. But so the law states that basically, as long as they're here, however they got here, they can claim asylum. Now, those are kind of built off of also like UN guidelines. And again, one of the reasons why, these mega super, treaty organizations like the UN, EU, whatever, how you can see the dangers where this can encroach on your sovereignty. If you're just going along with this just because it's right for this country at this time doesn't mean it's going to be right for another country at another time. But it's just one of those things to where this is a judge that his entire job, his entire reason for being is to ensure that law and order is being maintained in the country. Well, right now, he's agreeing to put an injunction to help people break the law to then apply for asylum. I'm at wit's end on this. Now, the injunction, I think, only lasts until maybe mid-December, and then there'll be another, decision made on it. But, I mean, I'm at a loss. Like, how bad is this going to get? I mean,
Look, I'm an idiot, so I don't know how all that process works, but is it possible, just to be devil's advocate, that the judge could do the injunction to send it to a higher court to let them kind of really analyze it and figure out what the right course of action
Set a good precedent. Yeah.
Versus him just being he might just be a activist judge, right? But
he's an Obama-appointed judge.
Okay.
Yes, that would be possible. I don't understand really what you would even get out of that, because I'm assuming that the Supreme Court would say the president has a jurisdiction here to decide who does and doesn't come into the country.
So maybe he just doesn't want to be the guy to make Obama mad. I don't know. He doesn't kick it to somebody else and say, you figure it out.
Well, I mean, I think this is it's a larger problem in that, like, whatever, like, let's say they delay this for 2 months and that exactly the thing happens. It goes back to the way it probably should have been from the beginning. Well, it's 2 months of people who have taken advantage of this. And this has become a more common tactic lately with activist judges, particularly against Trump, where they think he's acting in ways that they don't like, so they use their power, which is their power, to go and create injunctions instead of just letting it go through the process. Normally what's supposed to happen is like the policy would stay in place until it rose up and went through the process. Instead they're doing these injunctions. And I was reading I can't remember if it was a dissent, I think it was one of the dissents of Clarence Thomas in this last session. And those are always great to read. Anytime Clarence Thomas, I mean, Scalia was the same way. Anytime I wrote anything, it was always worth reading. But Thomas specifically calls out this practice and says, basically, we can't get to a point, I'm going to legalese this for a minute.
Thank you.
We can't get to this point where, like, every time a court doesn't like a federal law, they get to just overturn it for a few months until we figure it out. This injunction thing that's happening all over the country, way more than it was ever intended for, is something, if it doesn't stop, we're going to have to take it up. He said that. It was another case unrelated to an injunction question. It was just another case where the federal judge jumped in, canceled the policy for the nation for a few months until it got figured out. And like, that's not the way this is supposed to work. And that is on his mind. I mean, it was an unrelated point, and he made sure to put it in print, and I will not be surprised at all if within the next year or so, the Supreme Court finds a way to take that up and shut that down for only extreme circumstances, which is the only time it's supposed to be used.
I wish I had the list of all the things that have been decided, like on local, state levels. You know, like the lower level courts that have decided. Like, wasn't the same-sex marriage? Wasn't that originally
went up through the courts? Yeah.
I mean, so many other, like, they don't have to go through, the Supreme Court. Or they don't have to, like, go through legislature. They can literally do a lot of this stuff through the lower level courts. So they can change the way the country's supposed to be ran just through this judicial dictatorship style of running things.
And it can't rise up fast enough for everything to be dealt with, right? Like, Supreme Court can't take on every single one of these things, and they know that. So they keep trying to get their way in ways that they shouldn't, and it needs to be stopped. It does. I mean, we can't be run by the courts.
Yeah, and I do think it is important to point out really quickly before we break that Jason, I think it was you who was talking about this the other day, that people conflate a lot of the time. If you're against the migrants coming in, that you're xenophobic and all these other things, just because you don't want illegal immigration. Like, there's a time and a place, and I think we all can agree at this table that we're all for immigration when it's done the right way, and we know who's coming in our country, and we know that they're going to be productive citizens of society. Maybe they have, specialties that they can contribute, special things to our economy, but people have to be careful not to conflate just because you're against a migrant caravan, barreling their way into the United States doesn't mean that you're against immigration as a whole.
Totally. And something has to be done with this new tactic of flooding the border. Something's got to be done about that. Now, you think about now, like the main port of entry in Tijuana has been closed for, I think, like 3 days because of this. Yeah. Think about what that does to the economy for both countries. It's just closed.
Yeah. All right, back in a minute. So we were discussing off-air this whole migrant caravan situation, and we were talking about what if it were Canadians and they just became super impolite, because they're way too polite to just cross our borders, right? They're like, oh, wait, sorry, I stuck a toe in there, I'm sorry. But if it were Canadians, we would say the same things, right? You're not allowed to come into our country without us knowing who you are and going through the process. However, Jason Howerton, you said...
I think because Canadians aren't part of the protected minority victim class that the left likes to play with, I think they would be against it. They would look at it, 3,000 Canadians coming in, and they'd wonder, what the heck, what is this?
Get out of here!
Get out!
Canadians?
with your accents.
We don't like it. We don't trust it.
Don't need it.
All right, everyone, remember to subscribe and rate our podcast, The News and Why It Matters. And we've got overtime coming up. We still have to get into Dan Crenshaw. Yes. So we're going to get into that right now. We'll see you in overtime.